We're talking about the 5 design components of teams. We talked about goal clarity. We talked about task structure. The next thing we're going to talk about is team composition. Composition refers to who's on the team. So when we talk about team membership or team composition, we're really talking about diversity. And diversity is any attribute upon which people differ. There are 2 types of diversity. Observable diversity is the type of diversity that you can immediately see on someone. Age is a form of observable diversity. We can usually guess someone's age when we see them. Gender is usually observable. Ethnicity is often observable. Sometimes even things like religion is observable because people wear certain types of clothing that communicate their religion. It's something you can see on someone right away. Unobservable diversity refers to underlying attributes upon which people differ. So religion is often an unobservable diversity. You don't immediately know what religion someone is unless they're wearing special clothing that communicates that. Other examples would be things like your educational background. I don't know right off the bat what kind of school you went to, what kind of degree you have. Previous work experience, tenure at the organization might not be immediately observable. So those are the things that are going on inside of people that we can't immediately see the difference in. Values would be another example of that. So people differ in observable ways, and they also differ in these unobservable ways. There is a principle in teams and organizations called requisite variety. And requisite variety means that your team looks like your customers, that the people who work for your organization and in your team are representative of the type of people that are using your products. And there's this story about Mary Kay, the makeup company, that I think really epitomizes this. I read this story about Mary Kay in a textbook, and I've never been able to verify it, so I don't know if it's true or not. Take it with a grain of salt. It really gets across this idea of requisite variety, though, so I'm gonna share it. In the 60s and 70s, Mary Kay was like growing really quickly amongst white women, and white women really enjoyed and used their products. And they saw the African American market as this area for growth that was untapped that they could get into. And so they tried to market and sell their products to black women, and they were just really unsuccessful. Like, black women were not interested in Mary Kay makeup. And so the organization, which is run entirely by women, by the way, the organization invited their most successful African-American saleswoman to their executive board meeting, and they're like grilling her about why black women don't use Mary Kay makeup. And she was like, okay, this is what black women's skin looks like. And this is what the tone of your makeup looks like. And it was literally just the idea that they did not make the right tone of makeup for African American women. It didn't match. And that's what requisite variety means. That if to understand your customer and to make the product in a way that appeals to them, your team should look like your customer base. Now, I know that sounds like a ridiculous story. Like, how could they not be aware that they had to make makeup specifically for black women if they wanted to get into the market? But there are tons of examples of this. Barbie, the first black Barbie didn't come out until 1981, and the original Barbie was released in the late 40s, early 50s. So it took them like 30 years to be like, oh, maybe we should make a black Barbie. Johnson & Johnson still doesn't make black Band-Aids. In an incredibly ethnocentric move, they say that they sell flesh-colored Band-Aids, but they don't make black Band-Aids. You can get there are other companies that make black Band-Aids, but Johnson & Johnson does not. So yeah, it seems really obvious that if you want to get into a certain market, you have to make products that appeal to them. But without having a team that looks like that market that you're going into, it's going to be more difficult to do. So although there are benefits to having diverse groups, we often see more conflict in diverse groups. There are 2 types of conflict. The first type of conflict is interpersonal conflict. Interpersonal conflict is when I don't like you. That there is something about you personally, the way you do your work, the quality of the work, the way you talk to me, your attitude, something about you that I don't like. That's interpersonal conflict. And interpersonal conflict is bad for performance. The more interpersonal conflict in your team, in your organization, the more that's going to hurt performance. The other type of conflict is task conflict. Task conflict is when we disagree about what we should be doing, how we should be doing it, how we define success, processes within the team. That's task conflict. That's good for performance because that makes everyone on the team question, how are they doing things? How can we do things better? What's the best way to do this? Questioning and critically thinking about your performance. That's good. That leads to positive outcomes on teams. So diversity leads to both types of conflict, more interpersonal conflict and more task conflict. The interpersonal conflict is a drag on performance. Task conflict facilitates performance. We often hear people talking about the importance of diversity, and they say that diversity is good for performance. That is not always true. The research shows that there are times when diversity is good for performance, and there are times when diversity is not good for performance. And people have ideological reasons for arguing that diversity is important for organizational success. So people want diverse organizations, and so they point to research that supports that more diverse organizations are more successful. There's also research showing that certain types of diversity it's less successful. I'm not saying diversity is not important. I think diversity is incredibly important. I'm saying it's more important than performance. And I think that we should care about diversity whether or not it facilitates performance. So let's talk about some reasons why we should care about diversity other than organizational performance. We should care about diversity for legal reasons. So we live in a country where we as a society have decided that diversity is important to us, that we don't want discrimination and prejudice allowed in the organizations in our country. And so we have laws against that. So as an organization, you should care about diversity, not just for performance reasons, but to make sure that you're following the laws of society. And of course that means like protecting yourself, but also the laws represent the values of society, right? And so diversity is a way of honoring the values that we have expressed as a society. And then for me, the most compelling reason is social justice reasons, that we should care about diversity for diversity's sake, that we have an incredibly diverse population in this country. And yet the people with power in this country are much less diverse. There are 500 CEOs, the Fortune 500 CEOs, 24 of them are women. That is not representative of the diversity of our country. It's not representative when you look at minority status or sexual orientation. And we see the exact same thing in our government as well. And so I think we should believe in diversity for the sake of diversity, that everyone in the society should be equally vested and have equal access to power, whether through the government or through businesses. And so we should care about diversity because it makes our country a stronger place, because it is for no other reason that diversity is a good thing. Lastly, organizations should care about diversity because they have to. We are living in an incredibly diverse country, and it is becoming more and more diverse. Soon, whites will no longer make up a majority of the population, so we'll still be the biggest demographic segment, but will no longer be over 50%. Will be a plurality, but not a majority. And the country is just becoming more and more diverse. So the context that organizations are operating in, the labor pool that they're pulling from, the customers that they're selling to, are becoming more diverse. And whether you want to accept diversity or not, you're going to have to, because we live in a diverse country.